My name's Alex Rafferty, and I'm from SRAM, and I'm going to be running you through a little demonstration on how to set up the Quarq ShockWiz. So we'll start off by just explaining what ShockWiz is. It's a suspension setup tool that's designed to allow you as a rider to bolt this onto an air suspension fork or shock and allow you as a rider to best set up that fork or shock for performance for riding. Different types of riding you can set it up for, so cross country, trail or mountain, downhill style riding. And basically what it's going to do, given that suspension has a lot of settings on it, from rebound damping, compression, your spring rates, your tokens that you can put in there. We've got this a big wide range of what we can do with suspension. So what ShockWiz is going to do is get us into the right window, like call a window of happiness, the best place that we want to be to make sure we're getting the best performance out of that shock and the most fun on the bike basically. So this, you can see here then, this is Quarq ShockWiz that works together with this little unit. Works with your phone, Android device or iPhones, and what it's doing is sensing the pressure changes in your fork and sending a signal back to your phone, which calibrates the data, listens to what's happening in there, and then after a short ride or a certain amount of time spent on the bike, it's going to give you some recommendations on what you'd need to do to your fork or shock to get it into that window of happiness. So what we're going to run through is how to set the Quarq ShockWiz up on your bike. So in the app itself, as we've got a calibration wizard. So first of all, what we're going to look into is we'll put the Quarq ShockWiz onto the bike. This kind of bolts onto the air spring cap on here. This is just zip tied on securely, just making sure that you're not putting it in a position where it's going to restrict any kind of bar movement or get kind of knocked around with the shock being set up as well. Once it's on and secure, give it a little wobble. That's going to wake it up, and then it's going to start communicating with your phone. So first of all, we're just going to check it's there, which it is, and then we're going to go through the calibration wizard. So if you want to, you can be my pressing man. So if you click begin,
exactly. Yep. Great.
So calibration wizard, and on the ShockWiz itself, it's as simple as possible in that you're going to have kind of a step-by-step guide of how we're going to set this up. And you can see here, I'm not going to read them all out because there's quite a bunch of them. Yeah. But basically, as the first one says, before using ShockWiz, it needs to be calibrated for your fork and shock it's being used with. The calibration requires that both the compression ratio and the baseline pressure of the fork or shock be set. So that's what we're going to go through now. So compression ratio. You might already know the compression ratio of your fork or your shock, but it's important that if you do know it, given the amount of tokens you got in there or your air spring size, that's fine. You can just plug it in and enter the ratio itself, so 2.5 for example. But if you don't know that, as a lot of people don't, you want to run through the setup wizard. It's going to help you really get that perfect setup ratio for it. So
we're going to measure the ratio, yes?
Yeah, so we'll run through measuring the ratio.
Measuring ratio.
Great. So the first thing it's going to tell us now, it straight away tells us that the air pressure in the fork is 71 psi. And what it's saying to do is we need to remove the air. So just with a standard Schrader type valve that's on the ShockWiz, the same as what will be on your air cap, I'm just going to There we go. So we're just going to get rid of all the air out of the fork, just compress it down, just let it balance and equalize out. So it should, once we've done that, let the fork rest and just make sure all of that air's out of there as it is. Check on here, I can see already it's registering like 0.5 psi, so we're pretty much bang out there, plenty of air out of it. Cool. So that's our first step, and then all we're going to do is click next, and we're just going to run through it. So next, what it's asking me to do now is cycle my suspension. So to put my suspension all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, all the way up, just a number of times, and that's what's going to measure that volume change in air. Okay, so if a little kind of neat trick that works quite easy, I'm going to pull the front brake on, I'm going to put my foot on the tire and just compress down, pull up, compress down, pull up, compress down, and you just want to do that 4 or 5 times. Okay, cool. So once we've done that, again, let it balance, and then what we're going to do is click next. So what it's asking us to do now, our next one, is marking full extension. So full extension being the fork at its full extension, totally topped out. So again, I'm just going to put on there, pull that up to the top. Once you've got it at full extension as it is right now, you're going to click
Start Now.
Click Start Now, yeah. going to give you a little timer. It's going to say 3, 2, 1, just making sure that it's measured it.
Exactly, it's measured.
Cool. Okay, and then the second step on this particular part of the setup is going to be mark full compression. So I'm going to push my fork all the way down to the bottom.
Start now.
Yeah. So as long as it's down at the bottom. Great. And now the step after that is saying verify full extension. So again, pull it up to the top.
And start now.
Okay, so that's going to have worked out that rate of change, that differential in the amount of volume that's in there. So this is what's giving us our compression ratio. It's now asking us to reinflate the fork back up to our normal riding pressure. So take my standard shock pump, and the shock pump is just going to screw onto the other side of ShockWiz. So this will just thread straight on there. Well, I know that when we we made a note that when we let the air out of this, we knew that the pressure was at 70 psi, so I'm just going to pump it straight back up to 70 psi.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can see on the calibration wizard itself, it's actually telling you what it is. And you could use your pressure gauge on here as well, but I'm going to go off what it says on the actual app because that's where we read our pressure from in the first place. There we go. So we're on 70.3, 71 psi, which I think where we started, right?
71.5, so it's quite
okay.
good.
Let's go like half a pump then. Are we there?
72, excellent.
Okay, great. So we're around in the same spot. I'm going to take my pump off.
Okay.
Down. Okay, let's see what step it's asking us to do now.
Next.
So next. Okay, so cycle suspension. So it's saying here is pull the fork or shock to full extension, compress to at least 50% travel. So basically just using your suspension, but you want to get down to 50% because again it's measuring that ratio, measuring that compression, reading that data into the phone. So all I'm going to do is just lean onto the fork, let it up, lean onto the fork, let it up, lean onto the fork. Okay, and as long as you're going down further than 50%, that's all we need to be doing. Click next. So now it's saying mark baseline pressure. So your baseline pressure is, as the bike is just stood here, as it is right now, I'm not doing anything, I'm not on the bike, I'm not riding it, I'm not compressing it. Baseline is just your flat pressure where it is. So standing just gently with the bike, not leaning on it or anything. I'm just going to say start now. Okay, cool. So I can almost see. So your ShockWiz has been calibrated. So it's coming out with a compression ratio of 2.4, a baseline air pressure of 71.5, and importantly as well, what it's saying on here is that my shock travel is at 0% right now. And what I can see, just to have a little test, if I lean onto the fork, what it's doing right now, if we keep that on, what I'm doing right now, if I lean onto it, you can see that the shock travel has gone down to 42%, so I know that's working now. You know, that's it's set up. So we click done. It'll head us back into the setup wizard itself, and now I can head into home, detections, get out on my bike, start. And what we do with ShockWiz at this point then is ready to go ride, click it on, start new session, press go ride. It's going to record a load of data. It's going to feed that information back, and once we've got that data feeding into the phone, that's when we're going to start getting recommendations on what we need to do with the fork. You know, do you need to add rebound? Do you need to add some tokens in there, increase the pressure, decrease the pressure? So that's a pretty quick run through on what Quarq ShockWiz is, what advantage it's going to give to you as a rider, being able to best set up your suspension as it's designed to work for you. It's pretty quick, pretty straightforward. You set it up once and you're ready to go.
Excellent. Thanks.
No problem. Great to see you.